Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We are really excited that this evening we have candidate Eddie Edwards for the 1st District, and he's running for Congress. And Eddie, we cannot thank you enough for being here on the Londonderry View tonight, so thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure to be here with you guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
A little background, maybe it was a couple months ago,
Yes.
I was working late at the town hall, and it was one of those long days, and I'm kind of there by myself, and all of a sudden I hear this wonderful commotion out in the hallway. So I peek out, and I look, and all of a sudden I see like there's a lot of activity, in where the council would normally meet, and there's people going back and forth. And then someone said, "Hey, Eddie Edwards is here. He's running for Congress." And I went out, and right away you came right over and greeted me. Sam, your campaign manager. I mean, everyone just made me feel so welcomed. And then most importantly, I had the honor to sit in because I didn't expect to be there, but I cannot tell you how impressed I was with you as a candidate. So, what I loved was you said to all of us in the audience, "What do you want to know? Ask me anything," and we did.
Yes.
So,
you're very transparent.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
the show is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. That was our 2nd town hall, I believe. We've done 5 town halls.
Wow.
We're the only campaign that's doing town halls on the Republican side or Democrat side. We've been to all 80 cities and towns in the district. We've been campaigning since April of 2017. Wow. So it takes about a year to actually have a campaign in each one of those cities and towns, and you still don't get to meet everyone.
Oh my goodness.
And we met with people in their living rooms and their kitchen tables with their families and their businesses with their employees, and we've just been out really kind of explaining why we're running and why it's important to run at this time. A little bit about I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and why are you running? What made you jump into this?
I often tell people that I'm running for the same reason I served in the United States Navy, same reason I became a police officer. I absolutely love our country. I love our state. I've been in New Hampshire for 32 years, and so I've loved every moment of my time here in the state. Have over 30 years of community service to New Hampshire, from coaching high school football to wrestling to basketball, rec league basketball, working on with nonprofits from drug prevention, women's issues, young people's issues, poverty issues, disproportionate issues of contact with police. So I've done a lot of community service in the state of New Hampshire. So I've been very proud of that work. And now I'm running for Congress to continue to serve. I believe in service. I believe in public service. And growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, I was exposed to a lot of violence, a lot of drug use, a lot of abuse. And I think that shapes you in becoming a different person. So you begin to really appreciate those things in life, particularly the Constitution, particularly the Bill of Rights, particularly America's opportunity it provides. Your surname and your circumstances are not indicators of your future success. And so I've been very fortunate in my life to experience many different things. And one of the things I've always found special about New Hampshire is that if you work hard and you're honest, you could absolutely make a living, make a life for yourself. One of the things I also share with people about my background is that I witnessed my mother being abused by my father on a regular basis as a young person. At 10 years old, I distinctly remember my mother screaming out for my father not to hit her again. She felt that she was probably going to lose her life that night. And, but I also remember being in a neighborhood where I witnessed a woman being beaten with a brick, and watching the men in the neighborhood allow it to happen. Those circumstances are horrible, and reflecting back on those as a young person, those images, they kind of stay with you. That sound of your mother's voice.
I would think
They
that's
form
with you
you.
forever.
Yeah, it stays with you. And there are moments when I reflect back on it. And I see my mother now; she's doing wonderful. And when I see her now, I'm just I get emotional sometimes because I remember those days. They were very painful for her. And
also for you too.
Well, yeah. I mean, myself and my siblings, my older siblings, my older brother, who's by the way is in prison now for murder. This is his 2nd time in prison. The first time was for attempted murder.
Wow.
He became a drug dealer, a pimp, and ultimately took a man's life. He claims in self-defense. And so, being in communities where you grow up in violence and drug use and abuse, seeing that in your home, seeing actual drugs in your home, and then seeing
Not
those in
just
your
on
neighborhoods.
TV, right?
Right.
Or in the newspaper.
Right. But that's also the beauty, right? I had a grandmother who was very, very influential in my life, and she made it very clear to me that I couldn't blame my father or blame the community. If you want an opportunity, you have to work hard for it. It's your responsibility. So, I mowed lawns, picked up cans as a young person to buy my school clothes, buy my sister's school clothes, and I really appreciate the values my grandmother taught to me.
It
she
helped
taught-
form you to
Yeah,
take
it
the
really
better
did.
path in life,
Oh, absolutely.
than what your brother took. So, yeah.
Absolutely. She taught me to bend my knees at night, say my prayers. She taught me how to be self-reliant. She taught me how to be independent. She taught me how to be independent. But she also taught me how to forgive and how to love. And so I've forgiven my father a long time ago because that burden is not mine. And she taught me that, made that clear to me. And so my life has always been about giving back and trying to live a life that she would be proud of. When she's smiling now, she would be proud of me. But also, I have two daughters, and I wanted them to know that I never want them to experience what I experienced in life. Right? So we have an obligation to change things that we don't like in life. And that's certainly why I'm running. We have an obligation to change things we don't like. In our country, I want those same values instilled in my children and all of the children of our country. I want that same opportunity to be present for people here, like it was present for me. I wasn't given a platform where I started off on first base or second base or third base. I was over in the dugout. But in America, you get a chance to bat. You get a chance to take your swings. And because of my grandmother in this country and the Bill of Rights, I feel very proud to have had those opportunities to take a swing.
Well, that's good.
And you've served our country.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. Then police chief, not just that you were an officer, which is an honor in and of itself, but
Right.
you were a chief of police in our great state.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so tell us a little bit
So
about
in the Navy,
Yes.
just a quick story. In the Navy, I couldn't swim. Believe it or not. So,
Why did you pick the Navy then?
Yeah, that's a great question as well.
Good question, Kat.
Now, a good friend of mine, Al Boldazzaro, Representative Al Boldazzaro would say differently, right? But my buddy and I, we were going in on the buddy system to the Marines. And I remember having a conversation with the Marine recruiter. We leave, and the Navy recruiter is next door. So he sees us. He says, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" "Oh, we're signing up for the Marines." He goes, "Listen." So he tells me a story. Turns out to be a complete lie. He tells me a story that, if you join the Marines first and you don't like it, you could never become a sailor. You can never join the Navy. But if you join the Navy first and you don't like it, you can always transfer over to the Marines. Now, I know Representative Al Boldazzaro would hate that story, but that's actually what he told me. It was
We should
complete
have had Al
falsehood.
here with
Yeah,
us tonight.
yes.
We should have been. We should
That's
have
not
had
true.
Al.
Right. No.
I wasn't because of my grandson.
Oh, yeah.
That's Bonnie's thinking that.
Yeah. The Marines I love Marines. They're a great department of the Navy.
My
But
son was in for 12 years. So.
Marines?
Yeah, Marines.
oh, we got a lot of Marines here on
Yes.
stage right now. All right.
My grandson, he's going on his 7th year.
Oh, God bless him.
But my youngest grandson, well, not youngest, but the one that just graduated, he just joined the Navy.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there
He
you
just, he's
go.
leaving August 27th. He just joined the Navy.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more patriots. There's no question about that.
Boy.
More patriots. But yeah, they taught me how to swim in the
I was
Navy.
going to say, how'd the swimming go?
Sink or swim.
Yes.
Jump in.
Oh, yeah, they take you up on a 12-foot platform. They said,
I can't even imagine.
but first, they said to me, "You have any questions?" I said, "No, just one, sir. I can't swim." "Okay, well, you get to go first." And so it's 80 guys in my company, and they take you up on a 12-foot platform. "You're not afraid, are you?" "No, sir." "Push you right in." And that's a crash course in learning how to swim. And I made it. I made it. But I have to tell you, it was torture. It was torture because I remember being woken up out of my rack at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and made to swim on the floor. Right. But those things, they seem like, wow, that's a lot of pressure. But I mean, they're there to train you for a mission, right? And if you can't make it, Sink or swim, right?
Yeah, sink or swim.
There you go.
So,
imagine.
oh yeah. So when I left boot camp, I was stationed here in Portsmouth Naval
Oh, you're in
Shipyard.
Portsmouth.
So I was very blessed to get shore duty out of boot camp, and so I was stationed here, and I did a lot of stuff with tugboats, torpedo chases. We worked a lot with the submarines, capturing their torpedoes when they test fired and stuff like this. And I also drove small Navy crafts, police boats, security boats. Particularly when the Marines pulled out, the Navy took over the security for the base, working with Kittery Police Department.
Oh, Kittery, right
yes.
over
That's
the
right
bridge.
there at the border.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And so my Navy time was great. I really enjoyed every moment of it. But I had an easy time adjusting to military life because of the values that have been taught to me.
Right.
You know, so like I remember distinctly a lot of guys and girls who served with me had a hard time with the yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir thing. That was very, it's commonplace for me. So I never struggled with that part. Never struggled with paying attention to detail.
wow, my goodness.
Because when I was a small kid, my grandmother would take me to church. Southern Baptist church, right? So you're there for 3 hours, and if you nod or fall off asleep, you get popped with one of those fans. And so it was a great time. I really loved my military service. And so after that, I decided to get into law enforcement. And initially, it was corrections.
Here in New Hampshire?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it here in New Hampshire still?
It's
right?
Stratford County.
Okay.
Stratford County Department of Corrections. 5 years. Tremendous amount of stress in the job because you're dealing with a lot of negativity. I mean, you're meeting people at their worst moment, and it's not a pleasant environment to work in. And so I sought a more traditional form of policing in terms of being on the road. And I took a job with the United States Liquor Commission Enforcement Division. Went to the police academy. After I left the police academy, I was assigned to Keene, New Hampshire.
Oh, to Keene.
And there I really developed an interest in alcohol awareness training programs and also drug prevention. So I became what's known as a DRE, which is a drug recognition expert instructor. So I did that for a number of years, identifying people on different types of drugs and training other police officers in that arena as well.
Wow.
Got a little bit into identity theft, so working on fake IDs and identity crimes, stuff like that. So my time in law enforcement, I developed through the ranks, became the chief of enforcement there, also the chief administrative alcohol prosecutor there. I graduated from the National FBI Academy. And later, I was 10 years legislative liaison experience. That's where I wrote legislation on behalf of the Liquor Commission, wrote regulations on behalf of the Liquor Commission, prosecuted those regulations. So shortly after retiring from there, I took a job as a local police chief. I did that for that community. It was a great service, great time there.
That was in Southampton.
Southampton,
Yes.
Southampton Police Department. Left there, started a business, started my own consulting business, working with small business owners to help them fight, push back against regulations, comply with regulations. And also, I was the director of community relations for Congressman Frank Ginta.
You've done a lot.
That's right. Yes, you got me. I knew you'd be impressed. Yeah,
Very
he really.
knowledgeable.
He's not just like you're just
Yeah.
not talking it, but you've done it. You've lived it.
Right.
You've experienced
big
it,
difference.
and you love New Hampshire, which I
Oh,
think is just
absolutely.
so important.
Absolutely,
you know?
because I think, what I'm most proud of is my community service.
Yeah.
And when my girls were little, when they were little girls, we kind of talk now because they're 26 and 27, right? So when we talk now about those stories, we talk about they traveled with me a lot earlier in my police days. So they would go to drug prevention programs, alcohol workshops, and they would constantly get these stories from me about why they shouldn't use drugs, why they shouldn't do this, right? And my oldest daughter would always say, "Oh, every time Daddy tells you a story, something bad happens at the end." Because you see so much
Yeah.
bad,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what you become very paranoid about as a parent.
Paranoid and-
As a parent, your children are
Yeah.
your
Oh,
those are
they're
your
your
treasures,
life.
right?
yeah,
And,
truly are.
and so you guys understand that.
Oh
and it's,
my goodness, it's a constant worry, and with what you've seen,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's
It is. It's
oh,
Yeah.
a tough thing today.
But it's nothing better than a parent, I think. I mean, that's
No,
that's
it's
one of the most
true.
rewarding
It
experiences
is.
you can have.
Yeah,
It is,
really.
Yeah.
but a grandparent is,
Nothing beats a grandparent, though, right? Because you can always send them back too. Feed them cookies and cakes and.
yeah.
Get
sure.
it.
Pick 'em up and
I
send 'em
got
back.
13 of them, so.
Oh God, I love you. No, 13. Wow, good for you. Good for you. Yeah. That's great moments. And you know, and
like you say,
I'm not
you
ready to be a
send them
grandfather
back.
yet, though. But
That's a good thing.
yes.
You know, when you think about it, but yeah, it's and just something else interesting too that you mentioned at the town hall. Now you've had all this experience with writing legislation against, drugs and alcohol and all, but you have never touched a drink. Isn't that true, Eddie? That you do,
Oh, yes,
you do
yeah.
not drink, which
No, I-
yes, you've just never
I'm a
had
teetotaler.
anything. A teetotaler, yes.
Yeah, I've never had an alcoholic beverage, never had a cigarette, never had a drug. In fact, my wife, she's a wonderful woman.
Very
but
nice.
yeah, she's
So
great.
watch what
Very
you say.
down to earth.
Oh, no. Listen.
Very down to
am.
earth.
Oh,
and
yes.
Good partners. I've only met her at a couple, but very. She's like us, which I
Oh, she
kind of
is.
like.
Just
She's
down
just
to
yeah.
earth.
She's
She is.
a mom, a supporter. She's really lovely.
She's not the mother of my children, because we were.
Okay.
Yeah. She's my second marriage.
Yes. Right.
But my wife is just a wonderful person because she's a businesswoman, and she works all day long, and joins me on my campaign. So like she's at work today, and she'll be meeting me later tonight at an event, and she's been so supportive. And because when you run for office like this, it's a family
affair.
It really
It
is.
really is.
It's
Yeah.
a rolling schedule.
Yeah.
Right. And it could be a real strain on your marriage if you both are not
Yeah.
connected. So we had that real tough conversation when I decided to do this over a year ago, because I'm committing her.
Yeah,
this
you really
process
are.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very,
So
very true.
I'm very blessed to have that type of support.
Yeah.
And but so we have two little furry animals at home right now. We call them our children, our furry children.
See, Mom.
Yeah. So we have a bulldog and a standard poodle. And so for me, family is very important to me. And growing up in the situation I grew up in, I saw a lot of alcohol abuse. I saw a lot of drug abuse. I saw a lot of violence. So for me, it's one of those situations where I said, I'm choosing a different path, and because I'm not sure what trigger levels are within my own DNA in terms of how I have to
Right, it's
respond to
true,
that.
right,
And so it's one of those things that, people find that hard to believe sometimes. That you grew up in the environment you grew up in, you never had a drug, you never took a
Yeah.
cigarette, you never had
Yeah.
alcohol. No, it's not really that challenging.
Yeah.
when you think about
Not
it.
when you
Yeah,
really
when you
see
see
what
it
When you
firsthand
see it,
and have to live through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, and when I was a kid, I talk about this all the time. The police, I was really drawn to the police when I was a kid, because that when those sirens, I hear those sirens coming or the knock at the door, that meant relief for my mother. Right. So
That was a
that's
safety net that was coming.
Oh yeah. I remember the first time a police officer came to our house, and the first memory of that, police officer came to our house, and we went with the officer, and we sat in the back of the cruiser. But I remember him like guiding me into the cruiser, telling me, "Hey, sit right there, little guy," and he asked me if I wanted anything. And the only thing I can remember, this is absolutely true. The only thing I remember was making sure I got my cereal. I was making sure I get my cereal. When you're a child, there's just certain things that you constantly remember.
comfort, and that's right.
Right. And so, that police officers give so much
They
to our community.
definitely do.
And there's so many wonderful men and women in uniform in our state and around the country. And right now, they're being targeted, and which is a shame.
Right.
It is.
It's
See it
just like
every day on the news.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere
I
else.
have a
horrible.
grandson that's a sheriff.
Oh, wow.
Deputy sheriff
Oh.
in Middleton, Mass.
You're just producing patriots and protectors all over the place, aren't you? So, I tell you this because, like, even our military, we have 1.3 million people serving this great nation. 1.3 million people.
1.3 million.
That's nearly the size of New Hampshire's population, protecting the entire country and 95% of the globe. 95,
When
not-
you, oh my gosh.
yeah,
when you-
because America
Yeah.
represents 5% of the world's population. And think about that. But 95% of the world depends on us here at home. And we depend on our babies to grow up to
Our
become
babies,
patriots.
truly, yeah.
To grow up to be patriots and serve this great nation. And one of the most disappointing things that happens, not so much here in New Hampshire, because we get it. You know, we have a
Yes.
big veteran population. We have 120,000 veterans here. And New Hampshire participates as a community in uplifting our veterans and their families. But if you look at some of the resources that are available to veterans, it's really disgraceful.
Yeah, it is.
It's really disgraceful.
It's definitely because
Right.
I know that through my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
Right. Every 65 minutes in this country, a veteran takes his or her life. Every 65
Yeah.
minutes. We have some veterans who are receiving public assistance because of the pay when you're E1 and E2.
Right.
You know, you can qualify
Right,
for
right.
public. And think about that.
Yeah.
We have men and women who are signed up to defend our nation, traveling all over the world, or going anywhere our
Yeah.
country needs them. They write a blank check, like I did, so many others done,
Right.
people in your
Right.
family. You write that check and you say, I'll go wherever my country needs me, anytime they need me. And the response, I just think we can do much better. Because this is a
We
nation.
need to do much better.
Yeah.
we
This is a
really
nation
do.
of
really
over
do.
330 million, right? So that's less than 1% of our population serving. And you know, I think we have to do better.
Do-
I agree.
It's sad. I just got back from California. We were in Los Angeles, and there was every street we turned down. It was like there were so many homeless, but I saw so many holding a sign, veteran.
Oh, okay.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
this shouldn't be in this country. We need to take care of our people.
Yeah, especially our veterans.
Especially our
Yes,
veterans.
especially.
Patriots, though.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
starts with growing
Yeah.
patriots. Patriotism is much more important than anything else. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm a proud conservative,
Right.
very proud conservative, because I think conservatism is what put me here in this seat today.
Right.
Those values that my grandmother taught me. But also, I count myself as a patriot, like all of you.
Yeah.
Because the love and appreciation for our country has to be reflected in our policy, has to be reflected in our actions. I was in Manchester recently. Last week, last Thursday, I believe it was. My wife and I and another person, we were in Manchester. A woman's walking up the sidewalk. She saw my wife holding the flag. And she asked my wife if she could have the flag. She was a homeless person staying in a shelter. She said, could I have that? Do you have an extra flag? Because I want to put it on my bed, near my bed. You know, and I think to myself,
Patriots, right.
You're right.
her having that flag was a sign of hope for her.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's so important. It's so very
Definitely
important
is.
that we really take care of those young souls who are so willingly sign up.
Oh. And you
To
know,
protect us.
so
Yeah,
often
they're our
it's such
future.
a humble behind the scenes too, because now we've worked with Drew, Karen, and our Aaron behind the scenes. They make all this happen for us, and it was we've been together longer than 2 years,
Yeah.
and it was just the last show, and Drew was with us, and we never realized that he's a veteran, that he served our country for 7 years, and he made the comment that while you're in, your life really is not your own, because he said you might be in in Arizona 1 minute, and then next, hey, pack up your bag, you're leaving in 6 hours for
Right.
Iraq, wherever it happens to be, that you're needed. And that was 7 years of his life after college that he decided to give to our country. And we think we know him, but it's like we had no idea that that's what he did for all of us. So that
Well,
we,
sure.
and like what you did, and so many, your grandson, I mean, your son, it's amazing when you think about it. But
But think about this, right? If you're a veteran or you serve in the police or fire department, those are occupations you can't say no. When you're ordered to perform a
you
mission,
can't say
you
no,
have to
that's
go.
true.
Yeah.
When the
definitely.
911 call comes in, no police officer can say, no, I'm not going.
No.
matter how dangerous the situation.
Yeah,
It could be
definitely.
1 against 4.
Right.
If there's structures burning down, the firefighter can't say no. They have to go in.
Right.
And I think sometimes we forget the courage and intellect that it takes to perform in these situations, because it's not easy.
No.
No.
My goodness.
It's not easy, and they're human as well.
Yeah.
And there's a great degree of fear there, but that fear does not freeze them,
Right.
because they know they're serving and protecting someone else.
Yeah, definitely.
So God bless them all.
Yeah, my goodness, everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing on your platform that you're more passionate about than the others, is there, is it the drugs? Is there anything?
Well, there are a couple of things that are really important to me.
Yeah.
And I just talked about one with our veterans and our public safety folks. That very important to me. But also, what's important to me is restoring power back to citizens.
Oh,
So they
that's
feel like they
true.
have
I
a-
loved when you said that. That was so
Yeah.
powerful, right?
That they feel like they have a voice. Because, listen, if you're a part of the, if you're really wealthy in our country, you don't have to worry about much. And I don't mean financially. I mean in terms of having your voice heard. Because one of the things I discovered campaigning is that wealthy people don't call politicians. Politicians call wealthy people.
Yeah.
Right? And middle-class families, the folks who are working really hard on here, most of those folks feel like they don't have a voice. That's beyond their reach, beyond their control. When something goes wrong, who do you pick up the phone and call? And to me, I want every single citizen to feel empowered that they control their government, not the other way around. And the way you restore power back to citizens, I think, is term limits and transfer
I agree.
the Administrative Procedures Act. Now, I keep referring to this because this is an act in 1946 that Congress passed that essentially transferred its authority to make laws and rules, laws, to the administrative branch of government. So on a daily basis, most U.S. citizens will never see the inside of a courtroom. Most. Some will. Most U.S. citizens will never speak to their governor or their president. Most U.S. citizens will never talk to an elected official. Not so much here in New Hampshire.
Right. That is very true. That's true.
But around the world, around the country, most will not. But every citizen in this country, everyone, will be impacted or touched by the administrative branch of government daily. And this is a branch of government you have very little control over. This is a branch of government you're most fearful of. And to me, as a citizen, I want people to feel empowered that when something happens in this country, they can respond to it. Their voices will be heard. And if you have career politicians or people who pretend that they care,
Yes.
they don't care, they're only interested in maintaining their seat,
Right.
you're never going to get that power back. That's one of the things I talk about all the time. That's why I'm running as an outside person, but I understand government. But I'm from the outside, like all of you.
Yes, right.
And I say that because in Congress, they're used to maintaining their seat. In the military and law enforcement, one of your first priorities is to train someone to take your spot, right? Because if you go down, that mission has to be fulfilled.
Right.
And in Congress, you see it daily. I've never met someone so wonderful that requires them to be in Washington for 10, 20, 30 years. That's wrong.
Definitely wrong. I agree with you.
I-
100%.
Yes, isn't that-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like they have terms for everything else, they should have terms for that.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
They get steel, they don't, they just don't, I don't know, it's just a definite,
It's like he said, they're interested in maintaining their
right,
seat,
and that's
getting
it.
their benefits.
Their
you know,
pensions, their
right.
insurance,
Yes.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
They're not interested in the people after a while.
Nonprofit boards have term limits.
Isn't
Nonprofit boards have term limits.
Yeah.
And we have people in Congress that suggest that, no, I don't want you to have term limits. Who's that wonderful? Honestly.
Who's
Yeah,
that wonderful? I
definitely.
like that.
Right.
Isn't it true, though?
Definitely.
Yeah, truly.
I agree.
Yeah. And then
That
it's a
I
roadblock for
definitely
somebody
agree
else that
on.
has the
Yeah.
energy and the new ideas and the
They
fresh.
have to move on,
Yeah.
they have to move on.
We should be constantly turning these seats over.
It should be only so many years that they
Yeah.
can stay in those seats.
Right, I call it the people's house. That's what we
Yeah.
refer to as the people's house, right? And that's why all the people should have a turn in the crazy house.
Yes, that's right. Very, very true. Yep. It's
Oh, that
perfect.
is something.
Yeah,
But
it's,
I've always said that. They should have certain amount of years,
Right.
and then they're out. We have it for everything else.
And I
Yes.
keep saying that everyone should have the same health care as the people in Congress.
Yeah, oh yeah, that would be
If
nice.
you want to improve our healthcare system like that, Council Congress's healthcare system. Right now, 73% of their healthcare is paid for by the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So when they tell you they're on an exchange or they're on the Obamacare, ACA, they're not, because we're paying for it.
Right.
Now, they also have pension plans better than anyone
Yeah,
else.
Oh, definitely.
They were paid when they shut down the government. Now, constitutionally, they have to be paid. It says they have
Yeah.
to be compensated. But I think it's offensive that your leadership is so poor that you shut down the government and you deny the military their salaries.
That.
Yeah, it's insane.
You think about that, right?
Yeah.
It is insane.
It's
Marty,
it's
you're
an
right,
insane
yeah.
process.
There are two
It's gotta
things
be
necessary
changed.
for leadership. Two things necessary for leadership. One is courage and knowledge. Right? So a leader without courage, only knowledge, is useless. You're just useless. You just know a lot of stuff, and you're afraid to do something.
Right.
Right.
And a leader who lacks knowledge but has courage is just reckless. So you need both.
You do.
Yeah.
You really do need
Yeah.
both, boy. But Eddie, we cannot thank you enough. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers tonight about your campaign, about your platform?
Well, first I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me and participate here with you guys on the
I'm
view.
glad that you came.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you very much.
So much appreciate the
Yeah,
opportunity.
I really enjoyed listening to you.
Yes.
Thank
And I would encourage people to go to my website at Edwards4NH, Edwards, F-O-R-N-H, .com, and check us out there, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Right.
Thank you.
And you have been all over the state. And,
Yeah, all
and-
agencies, all the towns and cities.
Right,
Yes.
and then from here you're heading back to Stratford?
Stratford.
Stratford?
Stratham,
So-
Stratham.
Stratham. Stratford was earlier, now Stratham, that's
Stratham.
right. So no, thank you so very much, and
Thank you.
we will be following you and posting ourselves too. We can't thank you enough. And Kathy, why don't, we also
Yeah,
have that 4 in our
we
our
have
email.
Our email is the Londonderry View 4@gmail.com, and we also have a Facebook page, so you can like us, and you can also like Eddie Edwards.
Right, absolutely, that's right. And one thing I did forget to mention tonight, I think, is that this is episode 32 of the Londonderry View, and we're actually coming up on 2 years in
two-year
July.
anniversary
Congratulations.
Yes,
of our
you know,
show.
so
You
we're
guys.
pretty excited. In July, we'll do a little celebration.
Yeah.
But Eddie, thank you so much, and I guess we will say good night then.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Eddie.